Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
This is your host, Alicia Dubrell from Insight Media. Today's guest is Scott Nielsen. Scott is a professional development coach for individuals and organizations that are looking to improve results through understanding where they are, the strengths they possess, and how to best function going forward to achieve the desired results. So, without further ado, I want to welcome Scott Nielsen to the show. Hi, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I appreciate that and appreciate the opportunity as well, too. Thanks.
No, this will be fun. So I would like just to know a little bit more about yourself and your business experience.
Well, certainly, if anyone were to take a look at my resume or anything about me historically, you would see that there's a number of years of experience. But the truth is, I kind of look at the things of how I focus on the application of the experiences that I've had throughout my career, but more importantly, working with others, that really defines who I am and what I work towards. So I apply a number of business and leadership and development coaching skills and learnings over the years to help me with my clients and the businesses that I work with.
So what made you want to become a coach?
Well, I went into coaching basically because of both good and bad experiences. It's been the real experiences that provide us the best learning tools possible. And I've had a number of great coaches throughout my career, but I've also had a number of bad ones as well, too. And honestly, it's been the bad ones that I probably learned the most from. And that's unfortunately, and something I would hate to see happen for others, specifically those who I work with, of course, going forward. And I've seen a pattern over the last few years really begin to show up and begin to create a lot of problems for individuals, especially those who are now entering the workforce for the very first time. So as a result of that, I really began to specialize and focus on my learnings and what I work against on helping individuals entering the workforce today or smaller organizations really kind of build on what their expectations are. And this is what's led me to coaching. It's probably one of the lost pieces over the last few years through organizations, but more importantly, through teaching. It's rarely taught. And it's something I've wanted to focus against for a great deal, but more importantly, begin to help the right people doing things going forward.
Okay, and so you help people who are looking to move up in their companies. What are some of the strategies that you use to help them achieve that goal?
Well, this is a journey. Coaching is not something that absolutely happens overnight. I'll say that probably a few times as we go through some things, but a journey is about working with an individual at the earliest stage possible. And for some people, that's, fresh out of school into their first career. For others, it might be a few years later after they've been in the environment for a while, or they've been working against some things and they feel like they've kind of fallen into this rut or stuck type of a situation. And this is a generational thing, to be honest. Certainly individuals who have been around a little bit longer grew up more in an environment where you had to work your way up. But and certainly from a younger standpoint, which would be termed more towards a millennial or now even a Gen Zer, there's an expectation that things would happen a little bit faster. So for those individuals who feel that they really are kind of stuck where they are, and have a goal to achieve more or want to achieve more, I have the opportunity of sitting down with them. First of all, getting an idea of exactly what their expectations are, but more importantly, begin to outline where they currently are, help identify through tools or processes, expectations of where they would like to be. And then we begin to put together this journey, this roadmap of the pieces and the components that'll help them get to those particular points. And it's a two-way street. I've got certainly that role and responsibility to help pull that out. But the most important thing is it's the individual understanding and having a bit of a patience, but more importantly, expanding on their passion to want to achieve the results that they want to move towards. And that's kind of where that comes into where I help identify their current knowledge level, the abilities that they certainly bring to the table currently, and what might be those that we need to expand on and build on to go forward. But the biggest component, which is rarely talked about, is their conviction. And that is their passion, their attitude, their focus towards where they want to go. And when we're able to capture those three things, we're actually able then to put together the right objectives to help them move towards achieving that specific goal. And during that whole process and the tools played in, we're able to also begin to identify where their thinking preferences where they may lie, whether they're analytical or structural or conceptual types of thinkers. And then we begin to line that up with what their behavioral characteristics may be. And we put together an outline. It's a map. It takes time to do that. But, success so far has been amazing with the individuals that I've had the opportunity of working with from that standpoint. And even those businesses where I've helped bring this in structurally into their organization, it's helped them overall as an organization begin to become better at what they do and become more promotable as a business to the levels they want to expand towards as well too.
Well, that makes sense. And but you're not going to be able to do all the work for them. They have to have the drive and want to, move up.
Right.
So when you're working with individuals that are maybe looking for a career change, what do you think are the common denominators that would make them want to get out?
Interesting thing, especially now more than ever. And I find this even more true for our newest generations coming into the fold. And, the interesting thing is that for most people, of course, we from our youngest age, we have these ideas of what it is we actually want to do. And we begin to focus our pattern towards that area. And even up till that point in time, everything we chose to do, whether it was in high school or college or junior college or wherever anybody's gone to, further themselves, to advance themselves into the careers they want to go into, we do things because we want to or we like to. We pick our friends, we choose our friends, we pick the companies, we pick the organizations, and everything up till that point in time, it's because that's what we wanted or that's what we liked. And then, unfortunately, for some individuals, or their thought pattern begins to change. Once they're in that environment, they begin to ask themselves the question, how did I get here? It's not what I expected it to be. Or I just don't like the field that I'm in. And even though I chose professionally to go that direction, it's just not something that's really waking me up and getting me excited every day. And the key to this is, from a coaching standpoint, especially for those who are wondering what's happening or what's taking place, is to catch it certainly as early as we can, because then we can begin to formulate and adjust and help an individual move towards a different direction. The last thing we want to do is wake up one morning when we consider ourselves midlife, whatever that age may be, and all of a sudden feel like we're stuck. So as a result of that, a lot of the same tools, same thought process that we just talked about a few minutes ago in regards to how we get promoted are some of the same things that come into play in regards to how do I want to make a career change. But from a coaching standpoint, the most important part that my role is, and those other individuals that you work with as well too throughout your career, the role of the coach in this particular situation is to make sure that there's a trust. There's compassion, but there's this level of trust that I truly understand what this individual's feeling. And I can say that honestly because a number of times I kind of felt that personally. And fortunately, I was able to make that type of a change. But this trust level comes in to make sure that I'm, number one, listening, but more importantly, understanding where this individual is, but more from the standpoint where they want to go. It's not a judgment. It's not a role that says, you can't look that way or you can't think that way. Certainly, it has a responsibility to say you may have some obstacles. You may have some things that you're going to have to overcome, but everything can be achieved if we put together the right map or the right understanding of where it needs to go. Now, granted, it doesn't mean that everybody can all of a sudden tomorrow wake up and become a race car driver, because that's not how these things work. But certainly from a career standpoint and expectations in terms of where somebody wants to lean, it doesn't mean that they couldn't get into the racing industry. It just means that they may not be the driver. So we talk about those things in regards to what's reality look like, and what's the right tools, what's the right skill sets, what's the right knowledge levels we need to incorporate. We even go as far as outlining, let's talk about people you could go interview who are already doing that, begin to get an idea of exactly what all that may entail. What are some of the obstacles that they ran into? What do you look for? So I help. This becomes more of a career coaching aspect of it. And I help people identify through those things. So the cool part is when you're helping somebody change a career, you're actually sitting down with them and you're working with them through a discovery phase. And the discovery phase is really enlightening, because it helps individuals begin to realize who they are, but more importantly, what is making them gravitate towards another area. And is it something that's truly there, or could it be a phase, or is it reality? And those are all the things that we help to kind of dig out through this discovery. It's got a lot of challenges to it, but it at least allows the client, the coachee, an opportunity to kind of do some soul searching. And for me as a coach, it's got some exciting components to it, and a lot of reality as well, too.
Sounds like it. No, definitely. Right now, I just want to switch gears a little bit. I know you talk about working with small to mid-sized companies and helping them go from, the traditional transactional structure type of thinking to more of a transformational and critical thinking. What is the difference between those two, and how do you do that?
Oh, cool. Thanks. We're in probably one of the most exciting times ever from an industry standpoint. It's real easy historically to look back and everybody can kind of pinpoint, anybody who's ever studied from a historical standpoint, how America went from, farming into the industrial age, and certainly all the booms that took place in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And now more than ever, we're outside of actually manufacturing things. We're more into a service world and more into that professional side of things that kind of comes into it. Here's where we are. There's more and more startup companies. There's more and more opportunities than ever for people in regards to different types of businesses and industries. I mean, I recently saw not too long ago that, an individual entering college today is going to be interviewing for a job that doesn't even exist yet. It will 4 years from now, but it doesn't exist today. So this is exciting. But at the same time, it also has a lot of other components that are coming out of it. And so this is why I've really identified this small to mid-size groups of organizations. And doesn't mean how long they've been in business. I have a client now that's been in business for over 70 years. And they're a small family-owned operation. But they have the same struggles as anybody who just started up. And so here's why I bring this up, and here's where it kind of comes into play from this transformation of thinking. Small organizations started because someone had an idea. It was either an idea for a product or it was an idea of a service. And they began to add more people as their business grew. Well, the differences between them and much, much larger organizations is that the people they're hiring have specific skill sets to the job that they need done. So they're hiring people to perform a specific task or a series of tasks. They're individuals who their role is to simply do this and then they do this, and then they do that, and then they do this. And it's this ongoing, each action requires something to be done. So there isn't a lot of room for thought. It's more of that strategic, these are the ways in which we do this. And that is referred to as transactional. It's a series of actions that are taking place of tasks by each individual. Now, difference between moving from transactional into a transformational is when we begin to add this middle area, that management area. And when we begin to add those types of things, now we're thinking more long-term, and we're thinking about how we do things, and we're thinking about improving the ways in which we do those things. And when we add those things and we begin to talk about those, now all of a sudden we're thinking about what the possibilities are futuristically, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the line. And when those types of components are added in, now we're moving from this transactional step by step into a transformational mode. Now, this can be achieved at every level within an organization, regardless of size, but it requires us to think about and to put those right actions and right processes in place that allow us to begin to dream and think about the possibilities. A lot of small to mid-size don't have that right now because their entire success was based on this transactional way of doing it. And unfortunately, that's what begins to hold them back as their business grows, because they continue to think that it's because the way we did it is the way that will make us successful. And the truth is, in today's real world and the expectations that are taking place, what got you here won't get you there unless we begin to think. And that's where that I help these organizations begin to utilize the people they have, put the right things in place, but focused more on how do we improve, how do we become better, how do we get past what we've done and become better at what we do. And that's kind of where that transactional to transformational through critical thinking helps get us there.
That totally makes sense. Talk to me about misuse management and why that's a struggle for most companies out there.
And this is the scary part, right? I mean, for me as an individual, this is probably what really led me to become a coach and what really helped drive me to where I wanted to help make a change. And it's happened again in the last few years, and few now meaning 10 to 15. But in the last few years, larger companies, there's this middle tier, again, referred to as management. And whether it's the supervisory level or manager level, and sometimes even into director levels, the number one responsibility of this level of people is to move people forward. That's what their job is. It's to coach, train, and develop people to move them forward within an organization. When they do that, companies grow and great things begin to happen. Well, unfortunately, for a lot of organizations, it kind of went away from this moving of people and became more of this management of people, and more leadership responsibilities were moved into the management levels, to where managers now are doing more task-oriented pieces. They're doing more measurement pieces. They're assigned to more projects. They're working against things that traditionally were either at the entry-level role or were, kind of used to, from a development standpoint. And so that's where this problem begins to lie. And as a result of it, anytime publicly traded companies, especially, unfortunately, are victims to what's happening here, is that middle management has become either an opportunity to cut headcount because they really don't serve any other purpose other than being over others. So that's one of the first ones to go. There's an expense level in that area. or it's a situation where they began to trim that a little bit to where what used to be 4, 5, and 6 individuals reporting to somebody now becomes, 13, 14, 15. And so as a result, again, these managers are only managing a task piece as opposed to the coaching piece to help see these people get, to help them achieve things. So sadly, this middle area is not used to develop anymore. This middle area is used to manage. And I know we call them managers, but that's not what the purpose is behind it. Yes, they manage tasks, but more importantly, they manage and coach how people achieve those tasks and get them done. So flatlining organizations, it's a common term, and flatlining is taking out that middle area that in the past has been perceived as an obstacle or a stop zone. And in reality, we're now finding out that area and the importance of that area is what helped develop organizations and people long term. So the cool part now is that I'm able to help people understand that work with organizations. It's not about adding people back into the equation. It's about shifting the role and the responsibilities so that we can get more out of the responsibilities of what that role is and how we go forward with it.
Okay. You also mentioned this large shift. You kind of mentioned it earlier about, general employment shifts between, history, basically one of the biggest shifts, millennials in replacing baby boomers. What types of problems do you see is going to arise from that kind of shift?
Well, it's an interesting thing because boomers, by far, of course, that generation coming after World War II, was the biggest in history. And now boomers' kids, millennials, and now Gen Zers are coming into the equation, is the largest generation coming in. Well, with this huge retirement area now of the boomers, and I'm a boomer. So, I'm watching this and I'm approaching that, that magic age period. Well, we're being replaced by millennials and Zers that are coming in and, who are now in their, the earliest millennials are now in their mid 30s. But anyway, there's this gigantic change and shift in generations, but people aren't just people. Our thought patterns are different. Boomers were raised to believe that you started from the bottom and you worked your way up to the top, or you earned your way to the top. Whereas millennials and Zers are coming in with, unfortunately, they've been given some ugly titles, but their thought approach is more towards the immediate and the now. And how can I influence and what can I do? And I want the role. And it's not about working your way up. It's about feeling qualified. And certainly knowledge-wise, they're well ahead of any generation more than ever. It's the experience piece that may not be there. But if we're not properly coaching them and not properly giving them the right tools, we're in for a problem. That's where the shift comes in. Because what's being lost during this particular time period is not necessarily the knowledge. Granted, historically it is. But it's the experience base that's shifting. And we're not set up or structured right to kind of help make that transition happen fast enough. And so we've got some hills to climb here coming up. And this is where coaching more than ever, specifically in organizations, is more important than what we could ever have. And that's the thing to watch for. This is a huge, what I call the shift from a generation standpoint.
Well, and that kind of brings me into my next question. Today's structures are based on, giving direction to achieve results with little interaction. How do you help this problem when you're working with your clients, maybe a small business or mid to large business? How do you help that?
Well, this is a two-way street. There's a responsibility on both sides. There's a responsibility on the new employee coming into the equation. In the past, employees coming in could think about or could be told that they're going to be given the right tools and the right education, the right trainings, the right developments, all those types of things. And truth be told is that's not true now. All of those things are not in place in companies. And so it's very important that entry-level employees or those entering, into new careers are prepared to go get education, are prepared to go get skill sets, are going to have to raise their hand. They have to ask a lot of questions. They have to begin to ask for more responsibilities to help get them there. Now, on the flip side to that, people bringing individuals into an organization or that are in a managing role or have the opportunity to be a coach have a responsibility to not tell these people to wait, not tell them to relax, not to think that, you'll learn as you go, and certainly not to stigmatize them to a point where these employees don't want to stay around. Because here's the truth. People coming in today, employees are a commodity. They're a very, very important role. And they're not afraid to shift, and they're not afraid to move, and they're not afraid to change. In fact, building a resume of one or two companies is not the goal. It's about gaining as much experience with the most amount of opportunities possible. So organizations have a responsibility to provide those opportunities, those tools to everybody coming in, which means that they need to be prepared to move quick, because if they don't, they're going to lose the employee. They have a role, they have a responsibility. And so it's a two-way street. And sitting down with both organizations and their people and developing the right structures and the right thoughts and the right pieces in place and putting the two together have great success. We all want to achieve cool stuff. We just need the opportunities to get there. And so that's how we begin to overcome those things, has a vital role to it.
I completely agree. So talk to me a little bit more about the 3 levels of thinking and how you apply that to help your clients.
Well, it's there's 3 levels of thinking. There's some very, very cool psychometric tools out there too that are very helpful to it. But I've approached it more from the historical levels. So the 3 levels that I kind of work with are more from an old structural type piece. So it's that entry-level piece that I spoke about earlier. And entry-level jobs for anybody coming in, they need to understand that it is very task-driven in the beginning. You're hired to do the following specific things, and we're going to measure you against the specific things that you do. And then we're going to hopefully coach you on how to be better at doing those types of things. And businesses as a whole, it's built that way. So that's very, very task driven, and it's punching the clock. It's 8 to 5. It's whatever time frame that you roll out, which is cool. But that's kind of where those components come in. Now, to move up from a thought standpoint, now we need to understand where this managerial piece comes in. So from a managerial thinking standpoint, this one has, yes, there's tasks that need to be done. But now all of a sudden, the thinking needs to shift into how are these tasks done? How can we get better at doing these tasks? How can I become better at doing them? What might be some more efficient ways of doing it? What might be some of the knowledge pieces I need or the trainings I need? What are those things? How can I go after it? So it's this mind shift of, I understand what I do, but how can I become better? And so that's a thought process that has to be built in that really shows our level of how we approach it. And then there's the leadership side that becomes that 3rd level of thinking. And on the leadership side, it's, yep, the tasks are there. They need to get done. They certainly keep us afloat. But the question comes down to is, do we continue to do it the same way? Is there a different way of approaching this? Is there an automated way? Is there an opportunity of changing how we look at it or how we view it or how we do it? And what are the components and what are the tools and what are the processes and what are those things that we need to put in play? Not today, but over time, that begins to make us think that if we do this, how far will it get us? And once we get to that milestone or that goal, what do we need after that? So this is that, again, that transformational piece from a thought standpoint that we moved from, I'm good at doing this, but I can be much, much better at doing it or changing it going forward if I do the following. When you think about it, with all the businesses today, there's a number of businesses out there that started as one thing and are now something else. And the same thing happens with people. Our responsibilities today as individuals is to evolve as time changes. That wasn't true in years past. In years past, we built a career based on a skill set that we became the best at. And the future now is based on, I have a skill set that I evolve towards what the need is going forward. And so that's where this level of thought really starts to come into play, and how we can shift it and how we can use it to improve each level of our knowledge, but more importantly, from our thought standpoint.
And so how long do you typically work with your clients?
I look at these as generally about an 8 to 12 month period. And I have some clients that have been with me longer, and it's just because a new goal comes into play or a new expectation. But generally with a step, like to get promoted or like to change careers, it's about an 8 to 12 month period of time. And during that 8 to 12 month period, there's usually anywhere from 6 to 8 sessions that take place. And the reason why it takes this kind of time is, in the very beginning, we have 2, 3, 4 sessions relatively quick. And then there's gaps between the last few sessions. And that's because you have some homework, you've got some responsibility to test some things, try some things, interview, ask questions, kind of put it into play a little bit, learn from those things, come back, let's talk about them, and kind of work from there. And so it's got some very cool components to it, but it takes some time. It's an investment for both of us, me as a coach, but certainly the coachee has some responsibility coming into this.
Okay, well, I just have one more question, which is probably one of the most important ones. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you for your services, whether it be a small company or it looks somebody looking for a career change or whatever it may be, how would they go about doing that?
I'm a pretty simple individual, but at the same time, I don't have a lot of contacts either. And so the best way to get a hold of me is through email. And my email address is bedrocksolutions at ymail. It's the letter Y, similar to G, but it's a Y, mail.com. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm available on LinkedIn as well, too, and that's through Scott D, as in Douglas Nielsen. And you can certainly message me through that. But those are the two primary ways in which I work with it. I work independently, but I will respond usually within a 12 to 18 hour period to any emails that are sent over. But that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay, great. Well, Scott, I really want to, just thank you for your time today, your input, your knowledge, your attention to detail, and seeing how the future is changing. And the fact that you help come up with solutions to help that shift, I think is pretty awesome.
Thanks, Alicia. I really appreciate that and the time to be a part of this. It's really cool.
No, it was great. So, all right, guys, you just heard from Scott Nielsen, and this is your host, Alicia DeBrell from Insight Media. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.